Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we're going to get a little political fix and check in with Keith Gaddie, who's been here several times.
Well, this is his 10th appearance.
10th appearance?
10th appearance, yes.
He's going to start wanting a talent fee if we keep bringing him back.
Well,
like
I thought you were already paying him. I didn't realize. No, we're glad to have Keith back. He's at the University of Oklahoma. Is a past chairman of the Political Science Department and now still with the university with a lot of exciting duties, and he's got some really interesting things to talk to us about in this political landscape, as fascinating as it is.
We'll get to it right after this break. You're watching The Verdict.
I am a raw food culinary chef, and my co-founder and I became super passionate about just nourishment and simple, fresh, healthy ingredients. My name's Haley Nutt. I am the founder of Tribal Cold Pressed Juice, and I am Chickasaw. We started pressing our juices, just the raw organic produce. We hand bottle, hand fill, hand label. The name Tribal came from my Chickasaw roots. It really is focused around the idea of community. I definitely feel honored and humbled to be a modern day Chickasaw in this community and really taking my roots and my heritage and using it as honestly fuel and motivation, because I want to carry it on. I want to carry on the legacy of building things up, of having resilience. Tribal is growing and expanding, and we want to continue to grow it. And if doors open, we will walk through them.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They're there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
10 times you wouldn't think he'd need much introduction, and he really doesn't, but for those of you that have missed his previous 9 appearances for some reason or another, Keith Gaddie is our guest. Dr. Keith Gaddie from the University of Oklahoma. Keith is an executive faculty fellow at the University of Oklahoma in both the journalism department and the architecture college. Keith is an expert in teaching a topic that we're going to ask you more about as we go along, but that's called political journalism. Keith did his undergraduate work at Florida State University, got his master's and his PhD at the University of Georgia, and has been at OU since 1996. He has had various leadership positions. He's a former head of the Political Science Department at OU, and he's a nationally known expert in political matters, not simply here in Oklahoma, but all over the country. Keith, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Kent, Mick, it's good to be back. How have you all been?
We've been good.
Excellent.
We've been fine. Anything going on in your life?
Oh, just a thing or two. You know, it's funny. You know, we've had a lot of change at the university. We're on our 3rd president in 3 years, and we have a good one. We have a very good one. Joe Harris is an adept leader in that he understands academia and he understands business as well. And I think we are eyes forward with clear skies and unlimited ceiling for OU. It's a good time to be at the university.
And your position keeps evolving, and so where is this going to land for Keith Gaddie?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, I'm always a professor. I like to write, I like to teach, and so a lot of my writing the last several years has been moving towards elements of public space and political architecture. And that's how I ended up being invited onto the faculty of the Architecture College. But for the university writ large, mainly I deal with duties as assigned. A project will come up. We have a very exciting global initiative we're working on that's being led by Dean Greg Garner of the Education College. Myself and a team of 6 other people have been working with Greg on that initiative. There are other ongoing efforts at the university, advancement, development, fundraising that I get to participate in. So I do whatever I'm asked to do on any given day.
Well, you're an executive faculty fellow, and I guess the person that you report to is the president,
That's correct.
and that's Joe Harris.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been on the show a bunch.
Yeah. Well, Joe is
A former colleague of mine.
yeah, Joe is a remarkable leader.
Yes,
really
he is.
And
He always has been.
Yeah, and that's when he was named interim president, I was very proud to hear that. It was a very good step for the university.
Well, people are starting to get more and more interested in the presidential race now that we're less
Yes.
than a year away. And I know that you have many students who are interested in political journalism, and of course the Iowa caucuses always get a lot of attention. How are you handling that?
Well, what we're doing is 2 colleagues of mine over at the Gaylord College, Mike Betcher, who used to be at CNN and ABC.
Been on the show.
Yeah, and then John Schmelzer, who won the Pulitzer Prize at the Chicago Tribune. They came to me a couple of years ago and said, we have this program we put out in the field in Iowa. Can you design a course to get the students ready for the Iowa caucuses? Teach them about polling, caucuses, primary nomination, how to deal with experts, how to deal with the rough and tumble of politics when you go in the field. And I jumped at the opportunity, and that's part of how I ended up at the Gaylord College. And what we've done is we've built out, offered this course twice now, a course that combines teaching about how polling and campaign fundraising and field politics works, and the nuance of the caucus, which was a really rough and tumble, personal, intense political experience. Iowans take their role in the presidential nomination process very seriously. So the opportunity to send a dozen or so students up there to spend a couple of weeks covering the caucuses, most universities can't do this. And we've made that commitment at OU, and it creates a tremendous experience for them.
Will you be sending the students up there before the caucuses begin and then through the caucuses?
Yeah, what they'll do is they'll go up during towards the end of the second to last week of January, be there through the end of January and stay through most of the first week of February, which gets them through the caucus, the ability to file the last of their stories, and then they return back to campus. And part of what we do is we're able to arrange with the instructors they have for other classes to allow them to be able to take part in this particular activity. But every student we've had, we did this in 2016 as well. The students have come back incredibly impressed with the experience, but they also did really good journalism. They have an impact. And so what they'll be doing is they'll be putting together packages for radio and for television, for stations throughout the state of Oklahoma. They'll be providing print content for outlets that want it. And they will probably be filing 14 stories a day from the field for 14 days.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to be a big deal.
And the Iowa caucuses are just different. And if
Yeah.
you're an Oklahoman and you know you vote and it's Super Tuesday, you might think Iowa's process is somewhat similar, but it's really not. They're really not similar at all.
Oh, Iowa is wild because it's sort of like going to a swap meet in a way, if you've ever gone to a swap meet.
Yeah.
Because here's what happens with the Democratic Iowa caucus. The Democrats are the only ones having a caucus this year. Is when you go to the caucus, it can be held at somebody's house, in their garage, a fire department, a church, wherever. And everybody from the precinct shows up, and they're there to support their candidate. But you don't just walk in and vote. And what happens is you walk in, and people are speaking on behalf of their candidate, and everybody has time to speak on behalf of their candidate. And then people are asked to physically caucus themselves, to go to different corners of the room and cluster together. And if you meet a sufficient threshold to be counted, you get delegates from the precinct caucus that go on to the county convention, where delegates are elected who go to the state convention, who elect delegates to go to the national convention. But what happens is in that initial caucus, you're going to be there for a while. And if you're in a group whose candidate doesn't make the threshold of inclusion, which is about 15%, you can then go cluster with other people and re-caucus. And they keep going through this through round after round after round until you've reduced everybody in the room down to just the supporters of candidates who can make that threshold for inclusion. So it's really intense democracy. This is not walk in, grab your form, fill it out, and stick it in the machine. You're interacting with your friends and neighbors, listening to arguments, making deals, and making choices. Yeah.
Mayor Pete's making a big splash, and of course it's an adjoining state. That seems like that might be a little bit of an advantage, Midwestern influence.
Yeah, although with, it's funny with Buttigieg. One thing we did with this class for the students is we had experts from around the country Skype in to talk with them throughout the term. And so we had a woman named Laura Olson on, who's a religion and politics specialist from Clemson University. And we were asking her, how does religion come into play in different states? And she said, well, for the Democrats, to the extent religion comes into play in Iowa, it's mainstream Protestantism. It's Methodists and Presbyterians and Lutherans, it's the old mainline churches. And these are churches and religious traditions that have been much more tolerant of homosexuality than evangelical Christianity has. And their theory is part of why Pete Buttigieg does well is that he as a candidate holds out an appeal to these old mainstream Protestant Democrats in Iowa. And the combination of his message and his freshness and their receptivity as a group is why he's so popular in Iowa. But it's probably not going to play well in South Carolina. Probably isn't going to play well in Nevada, where the unions are going to be strong. But yeah, I think for Mayor Pete, I think there's a freshness about him. And when I watch it, it kind of reminds me of Jimmy Carter back in '76, where Carter came from such a different direction. Evangelical peanut farmer from the South, only a few years in politics, Navy guy, right? And it just resonated with people in Iowa. And I think Buttigieg is kind of tapping into that, but I don't know how far he can carry it. Because, he is tapping into a lot of money. But we'll see if that's going to get him through Super Tuesday.
I think we need to get to a break.
Let's get to a break. Our guest is Keith Gaddie. We're discussing politics of all sorts, and we'll also be delving into the minds of the current generation of college students, see what they're thinking about the political process. We'll be right back.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and our guest is Keith Gaddie. And Keith, I want to delve into a little bit about the Iowa caucuses, because it's a different format than what an Oklahoman might be typically used to on a Super Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a very different beast. In Oklahoma, when you go to vote, you walk in, they hand you your ballot, you go over to your little cardboard kiosk, you mark it, you stick it in the computer, There's a count, there's a paper record, and then you go home. And if you're lucky, like in my precinct, they also give you a really nice Nico wafer cookie, right?
I don't get that.
Oh, you need to come to Norman then. Yeah, we treat you special in our
Re-register.
democracy, yes. In Iowa, this is really sort of advanced democracy. And what happens at the Iowa caucus is you're going to go for the evening, and you're going to be there for the evening. So you'll show up at someone's house or a firehouse or a church or a school, and you're going to go into a big room, and people are going to be talking about their candidates and making the pitch for the candidate they're supporting. And right now, as of the middle of December, there were 16 Democrats running for president. So that's a lot of speaking, as we say down south, okay?
Yeah.
And then what happens is after everybody's spoken their piece, you cluster in corners and caucus together based upon the candidate you're going to support. And then what happens is they take a count and a tally, and for candidates that make what's called a threshold of inclusion, which is usually, I think, at about 15%, those people will get delegates from the precinct that go to the county convention, which will elect delegates that will go to the congressional district convention, that elect delegates that go to the state convention in Iowa. And those delegates get sent to the national convention. Now, if you don't make the threshold of inclusion in the first round, if you're supporting somebody who's running in the back, right, what happens is you can then go and re-caucus in a second round and cluster with other people. And they keep doing this until everybody in the room has sorted out to a candidate who's going to be able to get delegates. So it's very different. It's personal, it's interactive. You're sitting there having conversations with your friends and neighbors about who they're going to pick. And then you're picking representatives to go and support them all the way up the process until you get to the national convention.
And who would this favor? I mean, Pete Buttigieg seems to be running ahead in the polls in Iowa.
Yeah, and what it does is it often favors a candidate who has the ability to create an organization on the ground, who has the ability to spend a lot of time working on the ground doing the retail politics that is Iowa. I mean, this is very much press in the flesh, person to person, one at a time in it, right? There's nothing else like this in the world, really. So for a candidate like Buttigieg, who is fresh, actually fairly moderate for a Democrat, and fairly mainstream, he fits the profile of Iowans who are mainly mainstream Protestants, not evangelical Protestants. They're much more tolerant of homosexuals in politics than are other Americans. For a fresh candidate like him, can go in there, make a splash, build up a body of support, potentially win the caucus. And then what happens is he can turn that into momentum going forward.
Mm-hmm. But generally, you were telling me during the break that the person who wins Iowa is not a good indicator of who's going to ultimately be the president.
No. In fact, at best, maybe a coin flip 1 and 2 times the Iowa nominee gets the presidential nomination. Where presidencies are really made historically is in South Carolina. I know that surprises people, but in South Carolina, you get the 2 key constituencies for each party. You've got African American voters, especially African American churchgoers on the Democratic side, and then you have evangelical whites on the Republican side. So these are 2 sets of voters that have very different values and very, very different priorities than the moderate whites who vote in Iowa or the highly independent-minded voters of New Hampshire. It's a very different electorate, but it looks like most of the South, where there's a big chunk of delegates, and that's where presidencies are won.
Is there anybody else that has a caucus system like Iowa in the United States?
There are states that will use a caucus system. The Dakotas have used it, for example. There are states that actually use a caucus approach to nominating people for other offices. In the state of Virginia, a party can have the option of using a caucus or a primary to nominate for a variety of offices. In Colorado, they initially used party conventions for nominees, and also in Utah. And if you don't make a critical threshold of support at the convention, you then have to go to a primary. So this happened to Mitt Romney when he ran for the U.S. Senate in Utah, is he didn't have sufficient support at the convention to avoid having a primary. So he had to go and win a Republican primary to then win his Senate seat from Utah. So, but most states have gone to primaries. They're more economical. The state runs them. They actually get you a good bit more participation because they don't require as much effort on the part of the voter. But the downside is you lose something very, very important out of our heritage, which is that sort of town hall conversational democracy. That slips away. But you also do get a broader array of voters who will show up and participate. The caucuses are very biased against young voters, elderly voters, shut-ins, people who have to work at night. It's a very middle-class experience in a lot of ways.
And for thousands of years, we've noticed that young people think differently than older people. And so I was wondering how that played out into the current students in college. How are they viewing the political process when they've kind of, aged out of this kind of political anarchy of the last few years?
Well, they were disappointed in it, but they're also taking it in hand. If you look at the level of activism among college students right now, groups who were not traditionally well represented are stepping forward to challenge the system and to make their petition and demand heard. This generation is so different from their grandparents. And you think about it, the baby boomers, this was a generation that was going to be young forever, right? They were going to disrupt everything and be young forever. And then they sucked up all the oxygen in the room. I come from Generation X, where give us the tool, we'll fix it. We're going to make the world run for everybody else. That's what Gen X does. But these young kids, they're not patient. They're not going to wait. And it's interesting to see them in such cultural conflict with the baby boomers who have found wealth, right, and have found comfort, and are now telling these grandkids, slow down, don't push so hard.
Yeah.
And now the thing that they said, their rallying cry, don't trust anybody over 30, has been turned on them. It's really an interesting politics right now, but these kids have got something really special in terms of their ability to organize. But it really is two youths, okay? There are young people who get a college education, who are well organized, who see themselves as being active and having an impact in changing things. There's also another half, which is the kids that don't go to college, are not finding a good job, and they have demands too, and they have needs. And the one thing we are talking about seriously in the United States that will benefit them is bringing back the trades, bringing back skilled occupations, trying to revitalize an economy that allows them to do some meaningful work rather than just working at a gas station.
We have noticed that, of course, we're just 1 year away from the next election, general election in this country, and we've got the House of Representatives coming up again, and we've got a House race, I guess, in Oklahoma that's going to be interesting, to say the least, in central Oklahoma. What can you tell us about Kendra Horn and her prospects?
Kendra Horn's got the toughest job in politics. She's a Democrat sitting on the 50-yard line of American politics, right? Yeah. A Democrat who won a Republican district, barely won it, but won it on her own merit and on her own effort. It's going to be a tough seat to hold. It's holdable, but she's being presented with every challenge a Democrat doesn't want to be presented with. She's being presented with every tough vote. Vote on impeachment. Vote on presidential priorities when they come up in the budget, come up in legislation. Taking a position on every controversy that visits the Trump White House. She is a person that people go to, and they try and pull her out and pull her opinion out. And the one thing I give Kendra Horn credit for is she is fearless. She is a fearless politician. She showed it in her initial campaign, but she's also savvy. If she survives the general election, the Democrats hold on to the House, the Democrats probably take the Senate, but it also indicates that it's probably not a good day for President Trump come the first Tuesday in November.
We got about 30 seconds left. What should people keep their eye on? Any hunches coming up in this political season?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things to watch. I think, we're sitting here in late December and we're trying to figure out how the effort coming out of the Judiciary Committee on impeachment is going to shake out. I think we have to watch how that plays out. I think we have to watch the economy and watch the productivity numbers. The economy is the key to the re-election of the president, win, lose, or draw. If the economy tanks, it's a tough November for Donald Trump.
Well, we'll be watching with fascination. We'll hope to have you back around that time.
And Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Keith. Kent and I will have a final word when we get back.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
We are a very conservative family, and we believe in old-fashioned family values. We have a loving home there, and we love kids, and we have 5, 6 of our own. And but I had no idea we were going to go into adoption, but it's been very gratifying.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. It's been fun bringing you another year of shows on The Verdict here for, what, 18, 19 years we've been doing
Going
this?
on 19, yeah.
Yeah. And Keith Gaddie's been one of our favorite guests, and today he kind of delved into, you know, what generally can be a really tough topic to analyze, and he does it so well.
He really does.
And I know the students at OU are benefiting from his teaching. A couple of websites, ou.edu is where you can eventually find Keith Gaddie's information. And we have a website. We'd love for you to log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see or a subject you'd like to see us entertain on a future edition in 2020. Until then, I'm Mick Cornett, Kent Meyers, and I'll be back with more shows around the corner. We hope you'll join us then right here on The Verdict.
Merry Christmas.